What are you looking for?
I'm waiting for her.
Waiting for who?
The love of my life.
What?
Ever since I was a little kid, I've always loved the ocean, mostly because I didn't live near one. I always lived in a landlocked state. But even now, I'm still in awe of the ocean, as most people are. So it's no surprise that there are countless stories about it in mythology and folklore. Humanity's been interested in what's out there beyond the sands of Earth for centuries. And we've continuously told stories about mermaids, from the Sirens of Homer's Odyssey to the Selkies of Harry Potter. We've continually evolved the lore of mermaids to shape our worldview and to showcase where we are as a human species.
Hey, where are you going? What are you doing?
Probably the most famous mermaid story is Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid. And the most famous version of that is Disney's version of the story. In Disney's version, there's a young woman who wishes to become human in order to see the world. She ends up falling in love with a prince, they defeat a sea witch, and she lives happily ever after, as so many of Disney's beloved fairy tale films do. The updated live-action Disney version retells the story, but with an Ariel played by Halle Bailey, along with a multicultural cast in general, and some new songs that change the story ever so slightly. With that all said, my name's Josh Taylor, this is Modern Mouse, and today we're talking about the evolution of mermaids through history and what we can learn from the new Black Little Mermaid.
Hey, I heard from Jack that you're heading to the beach. Taking some time for yourself?
Yeah, just a little bit of me time, looking forward to it.
Well, don't do anything crazy, like you have a habit of taking things too far.
I'm just going to the beach. It's gonna be fine. Don't worry about me, alright? I'll talk to you later, Joe. You're gonna be alright, man. She's out there. Okay, so in order to understand the new Halle Bailey Disney live-action Little Mermaid, I think it's important to know that mermaids have essentially had different skin tones and looks depending on where their story originated. Ancient China had mermaids that were mostly fish with just human heads, and their tears became pearls. African cave paintings show fat swimming men, possibly with tails, and the established human upper torso and fin lower torso really came from the Greeks. They gave us Triton, the god of the sea, that was half lobster and half human, but over time he's been depicted more as a traditional merman, the male version of a mermaid.
Moisture is the essence of wetness. And wetness is the essence of beauty.
Though we point to the look of mermaids as coming out of the Mediterranean, folklore stories about mermaids have come from all around the world, from places like Africa, Scandinavia, the Caribbean, Japan, New England, and that's just to name a few. And depending on where those stories originated from, mermaids were used for different purposes. Some were goddesses of the sea, bringing fresh fish to villages that needed to feed their families. Some were the goddesses of fertility, or of the sea and the moon, or of arts and sciences. By far the most popular story surrounding mermaids originates in Homer's Odyssey, where the mermaids sing their song to lure men.
Boy, if they kiss as good as they lure, wow!
And as time passed, this became a fairly common theme, especially with sailors who would hallucinate as they spent days or weeks or even months out at sea. What you have to remember, though, is that Homer never describes what the mermaids look like. That was left to the imagination of the audience.
Those weren't mermaids.
What are you talking about?
Odysseus? He ran into sirens. You're right, it is definitely one of the most popular mermaid stories, but that's just because people picture sirens wrong.
Aren't sirens and mermaids practically the same thing?
Classically, sirens have always been depicted as half bird women, kind of looking more like harpies. Somewhere in the 1800s, they started making them look more like water nymphs, and then they blurred with the kind of depiction of mermaids, and they kind of look like mermaids ever since.
Cool. Anything else you want to ruin for me, Joe?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. Well, by medieval times, Christianity had taken over the symbolism behind mermaids, and they used them in the same way that Homer used his sirens. Rather than these creatures just being monsters of the sea, Christianity used them as a warning for men who were lusting after women. The Christian depiction of mermaids are probably the ones that we're all familiar with, especially if you drink Starbucks coffee. They're depicted as topless, beautiful women with long flowing hair and are able to spread their tails to entice men. The church wanted to deter young men from engaging in sexual activities, and mermaids turned from being goddesses to just becoming a outright fear-mongering tactic.
I was right! Behold the mermaid!
I also find it interesting and kind of funny that this version of the mermaid is the one that we've decided to hold on to and profit off of. I mean, as time has gone on, the mermaid, this idea of lust and desire, has become the thing that we're all really attracted to, right? Merchandise from clothing to paintings to even mirrors have mermaids on them. Some people use the theme of mermaids to decorate their bathrooms, as if to say that they'd like to get naked and shower in the same room as the mermaids that they're not supposed to lust after. But I don't think that it's just the traditional form of the mermaid that's attractive. You can't tell me that this version right here with a fish head and a human bottom isn't alluring. Or what about this one? Or what about this Siren with a bird top and a human bottom? Or this one with a bird bottom and a human top? Like, you can't just tell me that this isn't the most beautiful, gorgeous creature you've ever seen. I think that we can all agree collectively that these creatures are gorgeous, right? Anyhow, before we move on from the lustful side of mermaids and into the Little Mermaid, I thought that we'd introduce a new segment this season for Modern Mouse called Adjacent. It's like the word adjacent, but with Joe's name in it. Anyways, take it away, Joe.
During a few summers from 1959 to the mid-1960s, Disneyland actually paid women to be mermaids for their submarine lagoon attraction. Some kids could see the mermaids through the portholes of the submarines, while others could spot them sunbathing if you walked around the lagoon. The roles were often hard to get, and to ensure that the mermaids could swim well, auditions were really rough. The mermaids often had their hands tied together and their ankles tied together, forcing them to swim more like a dolphin than a human. It was an intense audition for a role that would end up getting cut anyways. For starters, the mermaids got catcalled a lot, which wasn't great. And also, the mermaids complained about the water being too cold to swim in, so guests rarely saw them from the submarines anyways.
Man, Joe's the coolest. Hey, I'd be interested in going to Disneyland if there were mermaids. Ugh, shut up, past version of me. Anyways, I think that the most popular version of a mermaid story is Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid. It's a tragic tale about a mermaid who makes a deal with a sea witch in order to become human in the hopes that a prince will fall in love with her. When he doesn't, she turns into sea foam and eventually a spirit of the air. There are a ton of brilliant ideas in this story, like how she becomes a mute when she turns into a human, or when she walks on her human legs, it feels like she's stepping on sharp glass. It really just shows how much this character is willing to give up to be human, or in another way, it's asking the question, what are you willing to do to live the life that you really want? The deal that she makes with the sea witch is that if she can't make the prince fall in love and marry her, then she'll become sea foam. It's like saying that you can't force things to happen. Her sisters make an additional deal with the sea witch where the Little Mermaid could kill the prince with a dagger and she'd be freed from her human form and she could return to being a mermaid, but she ends up refusing that offer. It's a theme that shows that you can't just backtrack on such a major life decision, and sometimes the answer to your problems may be the wrong answer. These are all themes that are easily relatable, and in this story's tragedy, we find our own life struggles. It also feels like Hans Christian Andersen was writing a story about himself, a guy who grew up in poverty and wanted to make something of his life, something better, and he actually did just that. Unlike so many writers and artists of centuries past who only gain fame and respect after they've died, Andersen was able to see his success during his lifetime. He was able to travel and meet his peers like Charles Dickens and work with royalty, but his rags to riches story isn't really a happy one. The author often felt like, and pardon the pun, a fish out of water. I said he felt like a fish out, and his loneliness wasn't just a professional one. It also bled into his love life. He often went after women that he thought were unattainable, and there are stories that he was also attracted to men, but that would have gone against his religious beliefs. He would never marry within his lifetime, and even though he loved his work and the success that came with it, he would die a lonely man. There have been a bunch of other stories about mermaids since Andersen penned his tale in the 1800s, but it's become the definitive version of the mermaid story, so much so that it's redefined the lore once again around these creatures. Of course, there have been a bunch of adaptations of the story, for film or TV or even live theater, but the one most people are probably familiar with is the 1989 Disney animated film, which also redefined mermaid lore. Disney has always made changes to fairy tales. Obviously, a mermaid turning into sea foam and dying at the end of the story isn't the happily ever after that you come to expect from a Disney story. Ariel ends up marrying Prince Eric at the end of the film. The sea witch Ursula ends up being killed, and the Little Mermaid's father and family accept her in her human form, all while she hangs out with a seagull, a fish, and a singing crab.
Okay, we need to talk about Ariel's Friends in the new movie.
What do you mean?
Have you seen any of the live-action footage yet?
Yeah, Halle Bailey looks gorgeous as the Little Mermaid.
Yeah. I mean, the humans, the mermaids, they all look really good, actually. But it's the sea creatures. It's all of Ariel's friends. They are upsetting looking.
Like Freddy Krueger horror movie kind of upsetting?
Imagine the body horror of David Cronenberg, but under the sea. It's like an awful high-budget Sharktopus looking thing.
Are you saying that the CGI is bad, or that there's too much blood, or that there's like not enough shark octopus hybrids?
No, actually, the CGI is really good. It's that really high level of photorealistic CGI you've seen in a lot of the Disney live actions. But it's also cartoony in a way that's real uncanny valley, real upsetting. Reminds me of like a bird with human teeth for some reason. It's not great. Like Sebastian has a mouth where a crab shouldn't have a mouth in this perfect looking representation of a crab. But like something about it's gross. It bugs me.
Do you have a problem with deformed crabs? Hold on, let me just ask you this. This is just for my benefit, okay, Joe? What do you feel about the attractiveness level of a bird top half, human bottom half mermaid?
What?
Interesting to note are the queer undertones in the film, especially since Ursula's design was after the drag queen Divine, which also kind of mirror Hans Christian Andersen's queer notes in his love life. But with gay songwriter Howard Ashman putting pen to paper, Ashman saw The Little Mermaid as a story he himself related to, wanting to be part of a world that wasn't his. I don't want to go too far into this, as I don't know if I'm the one to tell this particular story. There's a great video from Dream Sounds, a friend of the channel, about Howard Ashman and his songs and the queer messaging in it. I don't want to get too caught up here, so we're just going to move along. Disney's film exploded in popularity, and it brought a radical change to the perception of mermaids. Once a figure of lust, the mermaid was now seen as a child-friendly character. Disney, even prior to The Little Mermaid, had popularized the seashell bra with the mermaids in 1950s Peter Pan because nudity is just not G-rated. And when adapting The Little Mermaid, they opted to do the same thing, giving Ariel and her sisters seashell bras. And while nobody's running out to wear them, the seashell bra has become a symbol of mermaids, rather than them just being nude. That also made it safe for children, with merchandise flying off shelves that included dolls and games and clothing.
Who's having a beach party?
Ariel, Disney's The Little Mermaid.
Yeah! She's tropical, Ariel. And she's got a tan. Beautiful!
She can swim underwater in her tropical fin.
And kids' swimming lessons became mermaid schools. The entire concept of mermaids has become embraced as just pop culture. Mermaids are no longer gods or forbidden fruits. They're characters you can dress up as for Halloween or use as a logo for your company. And I tell you all of this because in 2023, Disney's reinvented their own version of The Little Mermaid, this time with a black Little Mermaid and a mixed-race cast of characters. Ariel's sisters are all different races. King Triton, her father, is played by Spanish actor Javier Bardem, and while Eric is being portrayed by a white actor, his mother is being portrayed by a black actress. What's interesting about all of this is how quickly people jumped on Disney for changing Ariel from a red-headed white girl to a red-headed black girl. People immediately labeled the film either woke or not woke or something. And ever since the announcement that Halle Bailey would play Ariel, the internet has been in an uproar about the live-action Little Mermaid. But I think culturally, Disney's doing something interesting here. And better yet, they've done it before. In 1997, Disney released a direct-to-television live-action adaptation of Cinderella. It starred Brandy, a black woman, as the title character, and featured a mix of different races. The prince, played by an Asian actor, was the son of a white man and a black woman. And the cast was so varied that it made a statement about how silly it is to only cast a certain race, or to even discuss race at all when these stories are just works of fiction. I made a whole video about 1997's Cinderella, and I'll leave a link to that video down below. And I think that it was a statement piece, and you could also say that The Little Mermaid is also a statement piece. Anyone can be a prince, or princess, or mermaid, or whatever. Race should not play a part in who you can and can't be. Obviously, in being realistic, there are social and political and economic situations, but The Little Mermaid isn't reality. And if you're looking to change reality, I think we first have to change fiction. Mermaids have done just that. Characters born in fiction impacting the real world around us because we've willed it into existence for centuries. Now's the time to find my one true love.